from there and then drove to Atlanta, got a couple hours sleep, got up, rolled over to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, saw the Beamer Bowl, wrote a column, and then came home last night.
Did they comp you for your mileage?
Yeah, thank goodness. I did the old, I did them a solid, though. I did the old rental car and submit the gas receipts rather than the mileage. I actually would have made money if I'd have taken my own car.
Oh, I'm sure, because, I mean, how many hours of collective driving is that?
Oh, my gosh. A lot. It's just weird, though. I mean, trying to figure it all out. But, Tyler, I mean, we had the two massive in-state, or rather FBS schools. You know, we had South Carolina. That's a big game against Virginia Tech. Yeah, Clemson and LSU, massive game.
Yep.
But I wasn't going to sleep on that North Dakota State game either. I mean, that's 10-time FCS national champions, reigning national champions. And it's really cool because they took that game because they have to take games like that, number one, because FBS teams won't play them.
Yep, because they were beating an FBS team every single season for a while.
It's crazy. And also, number two, they have such a loyal and passionate fan base that they can pick destination games. So they literally, a few years ago, said, you know what, let's go to Charleston.
Yeah,
let's take our fans of Charleston.
Yeah, I don't know if it's starting to get cool up in, Fargo right now, but I'm sure it's not quite as warm as it is down here.
I've been to North Dakota. I've been in North Dakota in January. It's not for the meek. You know, they don't measure snow in inches. It's by feet.
Yeah,
it's by and it starts from the first snowfall.
Yeah,
because it doesn't go away. So they're like, oh, we've only had 7 feet of snow so far this year. I'm like, what?
Yeah, well, I haven't seen 7 feet of snow in my lifetime, but glad you got in all you needed to this past weekend. Obviously, our focus here is South Carolina picking up the victory yesterday afternoon over Mercedes-Benz State. We're not even 24 hours removed from that game. The body is still warm at this point in time, if we're being honest, but Carolina gets the win. You know, it wasn't the prettiest game, obviously. You had your ups and downs, had some rust you needed to shake off, but at the end of the day, and I think back to one of the mottos they put up over in the indoor facility now about winning the fourth quarter, playing your best football when it really counts at the end of the game. And that's exactly what they did yesterday to seal that victory.
You know, no team other than Alabama under Nick Saban, and I'm sure we're going to say some stuff about Alabama throughout this program. But,
don't worry.
But there are a few teams, and I'll say this, in the history of college football that are as prepared as Alabama in a season opener. Every other team is going to have some problems. They're going to have kinks to line out. They're going to have things they're going to have to address, especially in this era, Tyler, where you have so many transfers. You're still trying to figure out exactly what guys can do and what guys can do when they're paired with other dudes.
Yep.
And to South Carolina's credit, they got it figured out during the game. And I thought that was really impressive. And just the effort. I mean, I saw effort in the second half of that game that we had not seen in many games. I mean, they always play hard, but I'm talking about go back to the Muschamp era. We wouldn't have seen that kind of effort that we saw in the second half yesterday under him. It was really impressive.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, Beamer coach teams always play hard, always play the entire 4 quarters. I've never seen a Beamer team that's really given up, and not that you were in a situation where you're going to give up yesterday, because obviously you led the game. And here's the thing, it's kind of one of those situations where you had to lead the entire time, but it almost didn't feel like it for a majority of the game. When you're up 10-8 going into the fourth quarter, that's a baseball score at the end of the day, which is odd enough. It's like there was this fear kind of in the back of my mind watching this, and Terry and I were at our watch party over at O'Hara's. Shout out to everybody that came and hung out with us, to watch the game there. But I kept feeling like, man, the defense has done such a good job keeping Virginia Tech in this game. I was worried there was going to be that one play, and look, VT receivers are making some great plays on those 50-50 balls that we'll get to here coming up in a little bit. But I was worried there's going to be that one play where there was a busted coverage and they break open, score a long touchdown, and the offense wouldn't be able to put together a good enough drive to go down there and take the lead back. Fortunately, that didn't happen because, again, you finally started pulling away from there in the fourth quarter.
Drones is a good quarterback, dude. That guy's got skills.
He's got good abilities. Yeah.
I was really impressed. He got off some throws on the run that really showed off his arm strength. His receivers let him down a couple of times. But the thing I was concerned about, Tyler, and I still am very concerned, and we can address this as much as you want or as little as you want. It's in my column today, postcourier.com. I was concerned about the South Carolina's inability to get any kind of inside push on the offensive line. And I thought that would be what would ultimately undo them, that playing with the lead, trying to, work the clock, but at the same time advance the football, they wouldn't be able to do it.
Yep.
And Sellers already has happy feet. He's still developing. Pressure is not his friend. I mean, he has not yet learned how to sit back and absorb the pressure and then figure out if he should take a sack, get rid of the football, or run or what. He just takes off. But the offensive line, the lack of push concerned me, and I thought that would be where Virginia Tech would force a turnover, South Carolina would be in a situation of 4th and short, go for it, not get it. But in the end, it didn't matter. And I've got to say this: Bakari Swain's punt return.
Oh, of course.
Might have been the greatest individual effort I've ever seen in person when you break it down. How many spins did he have? And then that final dive into the end zone. And it was such a momentum shifter and a special teams play in the Beamer Bowl. I mean, how appropriate.
Oh, no, it seemed perfectly like poetic justice at the end of the day. That's exactly how something would happen like that in a game, like that between South Carolina and Virginia Tech. And again, we got a lot of things to get to over the course of the next couple of hours of everything that did happen with this game. But sorry, Ed Bird, going to be calling things on the fly here. I do want to get cut number 9 in here real quick, because this is Coach Beamer. He is talking about that punt return, but also the underrated aspect of this, the option of making Virginia Tech re-kick after they had the procedural penalty the first time they punted the ball. Cut number 9, Ed. Here's what Coach Beamer had to say.
Yeah, I just told our team in the locker room, there's a lot of coaches that would just say, hey, we'll take the extra 5 yards, and not us. Anytime an old special teams coach told me like 20 years ago, not my dad, David, that'd be way too fitting if it was him, but another special teams coach told me nothing good for the kicking team ever happens after a re-kick. And I'm sick in the head. I was having PTSD to the 2009, thank you. You clearly remember 2009 Clemson game where we kicked off to C.J. Spiller, Jacoby Ford, and Ellington, I think, maybe, and we were all sides. And then we came back over to the sideline, and I had that voice in my head, nothing good happens after a re-kick, and I let DJ Swearinger and Stephon Gilmore and those guys talk me into re-kicking, and then C.J. Spiller took it back 80 yards for a touchdown. So I was thinking of that, but really it was just we really felt like we had an advantage on when they punt the football with our people out there, whether blocking a punt, which we came close on a couple of them, or returning one. And because we were able to generate some pressure on them, they're very cognizant of getting a punt block. So our guys did a great job. And guys that are DQ Smith's out there. I mean, he's double teaming a guy, and it was really, really cool. And then so proud of Bakari Swain. He's a weapon, and it was really neat for him to do that, and how fitting that is, playing Virginia Tech and with their history, my dad's history of special teams, to score. I know Joe D's glad this week's over, because I'm always amped up about special teams, but this week especially with everything that we had going. But really, what a play, and we needed it too. We weren't playing great on offense, and we needed a spark at that point.
Yeah, I think it's funny as we're talking about this, they're quite literally discussing this exact play on the Pat McAfee show right now with one of their early shout-outs to begin the show. But there's a lot of layers to this, and this is what I've said all morning long. You have the element of Beamer making the decision to force Virginia Tech to re-kick, where you could have easily taken the 5 yards, given the ball back to Lenore Sellers, and just started your drive, and who knows how that would have gone. If it was anything like the drives leading up to that, you may have stalled out, had to punt the ball, and we end up not having any kind of touchdown there. But he forced him to re-kick, and also it's the fact that you had the trust in Bakari Swain, who had dropped the punt earlier on in the game. He wasn't even supposed to be returning punts. Jalen Kilgore had a bit of a hamstring issue that they wanted to limit him to just defensive stuff. He did go out there and field a couple punts after Swain dropped it, but they made the decision to put Swain back out there, and obviously he went out there and made that decision worthwhile with the returning the punt all the way to the house and made some great moves on his own. But his teammates around him doing their part and not getting another flag. Because, again, we're so used to watching football now. Anytime you have a punt return or a kick return, whether it goes for a touchdown or just it's a long return anyway, you always look for a flag. Okay, somebody was holding. Somebody had a block in the back. There was always some kind of penalty there that's going to end up pulling it back. And thankfully, and I'm just watching the clip again here on the TV, everybody did their job. Nobody committed a penalty, and the call was able to stand and give South Carolina. It wasn't the lead to end the game, certainly. It was still early in the fourth quarter, and you're up by 9 at that point in time. But you felt a whole lot better with a 2-score lead with the way your defense was playing from there on out.
And by the way, just got an email. Bakari Swain co-special teams player of the week in the Southeastern Conference. Fred Johnson also, too, linebacker, had an interception, knocked down a pass, 10 tackles. He's co-defense player of the week.
Hard to argue with either one of those, and we'll get to JR certainly, but huge moment for Akari Swain, who we've talked a lot about him over the past couple years, the athleticism, what his potential is, and we've seen him get in on defense as well, but definitely his defining play as a Gamecock so far.
And you think about everything that's happened to him over the course of his career, you know. I mean, when his car stolen?
Was it?
Like at what point? Yeah, I think he's had a lot of stuff happen, man. He's had a lot of different things happen to him over the course of his career. He's had some disciplinary issues, this and that, and now here he is on this biggest stage. And I just filled out my ballot, by the way. I'm a voter for these different awards. It's like the Cheez-It Play of the Week and all this stuff. And I just voted for that as the Play of the Week.
Yeah,
that was my FWAA Cheez-It Play of the Week. You know, I mean, it was such a momentum shifter, and good on Shane for trusting his instincts and going against the grain in that situation, because that's if that doesn't work out, Tyler.
No.
We might be talking about a different narrative. We might be 0-2 with the big two schools in the state right now.
Yeah, very much so. And again, the defense was playing great. You just felt like you needed some kind of spark to get things back going, or at least create some separation, make you feel a little bit more comfortable, which is exactly what Swain did on that punt return. And obviously, offense was able to go down and get the touchdown later on with Nick Carver, which we'll get to a little bit later on as well. But so much to unpack from this game. You mentioned J.R. Johnson. I do want to get to him once again coming up next, as well as let's hear Coach Beamer's thoughts on him and his play on Sunday there against Virginia Tech. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Scott Hamilton along with you on your Reaction Monday. Let us know your thoughts, 803-404-6100 on the Firehouse Subs text line, as well as the AAA heating and air phone lines, as we'll react all day long here on the game. It's like, hold on. All right, here for our friends over at Tilly's Warehouse. For over 2 decades, 5 Points has lacked the convenience of a local wine and spirit store, but that's all changed with Tilly's Warehouse, located on Green Street, right behind the Salty Nut Cafe in the old Pavlov's building. It's a can't-miss destination to get all of your wine and spirit needs. I went in there the other day. They truly have a selection that is second to none. You can go in there and get whatever you are looking for, including the Garnet and Black vodka, which is vodka that goes through the Garnet and Black NIL, which will contribute 25% to the Garnet Trust and pay right in to allowing South Carolina athletics to continue to thrive. They also have a Class B license over at Tilly's, so if you're a local bar and looking to restock, you can go over there and get whatever you need. I don't have, in 60 seconds, I can't tell you everything about them. Go online to TillysWarehouse.com for more information. Tilly's Warehouse over in 5 Points.
and 10 at the Gamecock 20-yard line, just right outside of it. Drones back in the shotgun again, looking over to that left side. He's got 3 wide receivers that way. Stumbles with the football. Here comes Stewart. He can't get him. Drones rolling right side, throwing to the end zone, picked off. The Gamecocks come out of the end zone. That's the only mistake they made.
That's only one, you're right, yeah.
Only mistake that they made. And that spread, J.R. Johnson, 6'4", 240-pound freshman from Norfolk, Virginia, with his first big play as a Gamecock.
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Scott Hamilton of the Post and Courier, along with you here on your Reaction Monday. That was the call yesterday with Todd and Tommy on the Gamecocks Radio Network. As J.R. Johnson was able to snag that interception in the end zone, he probably should have gone down and taken a knee, and that would have put Carolina in a better position because a couple days later, Lenore Sellers was sacked in the end zone for a safety, but it ended up working out okay as Carolina won the game regardless. But J.R. Johnson is somebody that we have talked a lot about in the offseason, heard a lot about in the offseason from coaches, from teammates. Debo Williams sat in the exact spot I'm in right now 2 weeks ago and told us on our show, hey, this guy's a dude. He's going to go out there and he's going to pick up right where we left off as a linebacking unit a season ago. And lo and behold, he did that. You know, obviously the interception was the highlight play there, but this guy was all over the field, flying around like a missile, making tackles left and right, and looking every bit the part of what the hype was in the offseason.
Yeah, and I agree. And that was one of my concerns going into this game. How would they do next level? I actually felt like the defensive front would do pretty good. I was really impressed, all things considered, with the front four yesterday, but I was wondering how the linebacking core would do. But he did a really good job of working things between the tackles, but also just being around the football at all the times. Kind of your point, he was flying all over, but it seemed like if he wasn't making a tackle, he was funneling a ball carrier towards somebody who was going to make a play.
Yep. Yeah, and on that play that he got the interception, when you go back and look, he covered a lot of ground in that play because they initially showed blitz. So he's right there, you know, in between the guys on the front four, and then he backs out into coverage and basically ran and then undercut the slot receiver to be in the end zone to make the pick. I'm assuming Drones just didn't see him because there was already a couple guys behind the receiver that I'm assuming he anticipated he could underthrow a little bit and get it to his guy, but there was big number 0 right there. It's kind of a hard guy to miss, makes the interception, and again, he probably should have taken the knee, and Beamer alluded to it after the game, like, hey, he was an offensive player back in high school and a good one, so he probably saw, you know, 100-plus yard, you know, interception return for a touchdown waiting for him, and that obviously didn't happen. So that's a teachable moment. Again, this is his first time being in a starting role in a, you know, major college football game. So that's something to learn from. But outside of that, I have no complaints about the way that he played. And again, if you were to take the numbers and the nameplates off and just tell me that was one of the guys, you know, make your pick of Debo or Demetrius Knight or Bam Martin Scott, I would have believed you that because he looks kind of in the same mold as those guys were a year ago.
You know, it's funny you said that. I literally thought that yesterday, how these guys physically look the same, the way they play looks the same. And I think that gives Clayton a really good sense of calm and of confidence. And I give Clayton all the credit in the world. I felt he pushed a lot of levers yesterday, or pulled a lot of levers yesterday that just worked out beautifully. There were a couple of plays, Tyler, where Clayton had them shift coverages and shift the front look. Like right before the snap, they were doing a lot of movement, a lot of pre-snap movement, and I thought Clayton called a wonderful game. We have to decide this though: who called a better game, Clayton or Joe D? Who called a better?
Oh
game?
man,
I gotta go Clayton.
I'll give it to Clayton. Special teams, obviously the highlight play of Vakari Swain there, but I would definitely go with Clayton White because here's the thing. And look, I don't know how good Virginia Tech's going to be. They might be around 500 again. Maybe they go 7-5, and maybe that'll be enough to save Brent Pry's job. I don't know. I don't think they're going to be contending for the ACC necessarily. But you take any Power 4 team and keep them out of the end zone for 4 quarters, you've accomplished something.
Yeah, be it at home or neutral site or wherever. You're right. Yeah. I want to throw this in there though on the flip side, and again, we're giving flowers to the defense and the special teams. I'm still not quite sure what to make of Mike Shula's offense yesterday.
I was so the opening drive was great, right? You had the dinks and the dunks, you had some designed runs, and obviously Sellers ends up running in the end zone for himself, you know, for that first touchdown there. And I thought that went that went great. And here's what we have. Here's our process of learning about Mike Shula, because a lot of offensive coordinators take what happens on those scripted plays and say, okay, here's what worked, here's what didn't. That's going to craft my game plan for the entire game. That didn't really seem to be Shula's MO, and I'd have to go back and watch a Panthers game from a decade ago now to see if that's something that was consistent when he was with, in the NFL. But it took him a while to get back to those short throws, mainly to the tight ends. It took him a while to get back to design runs to the receivers. When they did those things, they worked. Now, again, I don't have a problem with trying other things as the game went along, but when we see something works, I want you to continue to do it until it doesn't work anymore, and that didn't quite end up happening with Shula in his first, well, he had the bowl game, but his first official full-time game as the play caller.
I felt that he wasn't doing enough to negate not getting that push up the middle from the interior line. We weren't seeing enough things to expand things horizontally.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have actually seen some mesh patterns in the passing game. I thought that could have caused some issues, the way they were spying on Sellers and the way they were collapsing to come down on Sellers, and we didn't get it. Now, again, it's week one. It's week one.
Sure.
We're going to get a better look.
Everybody's going to learn. Everybody's going to get better. That's even the coaches. That's the idea.
And well, and it's kind of the blessing, and it is week one, and they were able to not show everything in the cupboard offensively going forward, so they presumably won't have to do it this week against South Carolina State. So I'm not ready to give him like an F. I'm not ready to give him a D. I'll give him a C right now, work in progress.
Well, and going back to the bowl game, and the one thing that people were critical of after the Citrus Bowl was, man, they didn't let Sellers use his legs a lot. Now, again, Illinois' game plan was to spy him the entire time to try and prevent him from running, but there are still ways where you can get the ball in his hands and allow him to run, even if the defense is keying in on him doing that, which we saw yesterday, and it looked good. So that's something I'd like to see maybe adjusted more, is just getting the ball in Sellers' hands a little bit more and allowing him to use his athleticism to make things happen, because he salted the game away at the very end by just quite literally running and tight-roping the sidelines on that one of several really good runs that he had in the game. So I'd like to see more of that. Again, it's a development process with this whole thing, and we'll see if Mike Shula changes that going forward. Again, like you said, you don't have to really add any new wrinkles to this game against SC State, because you should be able to win that game pretty handily without getting too crazy. But as you get into Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Missouri, and all these teams coming up in a couple weeks, you certainly hope you see some good things there. So we'll continue to react to this, as well as the other things that happen around week one of college football, as the halftime show rolls along on your Reaction Monday. He is Scott Hamilton of the Post and Courier. I'm Tyler Head here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Scott Hamilton, the Post and Courier, along with you here on your Reaction Monday as we not only break down South Carolina's 24-11 win to open the season, but also everything else that happened in week 1 of college football. That was the voice. No, it's kind of hard to hear, I'm guessing, because they were on the road. They didn't have the best setup for their post-game press conference, but that was Brian Kelly talking after Saturday night's 17-10 win for LSU over Clemson about the reemergence of his defense. And that's something that we've talked about these past couple years with Kelly teams is, man, they've had some offensive firepower, namely with the Heisman Trophy winner a couple years ago in Jaden Daniels, but the defense has not been able to be on par to make this team a championship-level contender, and it's only one game, so a lot of football to be played between now and December, but LSU looked every bit the part of a championship type of team on Saturday with their victory over Clemson.
I was fortunately standing near him when he was saying all that, and I'm telling you what, he's got a little pep in his step these days, but why the heck not? I mean, it's the first time they've won an opener since he's been at LSU, and even prior to that, they haven't won an opener since Joe Burrow was quarterback. But that defense, Tyler, they dipped in. Okay, they had guys coming back. They had Perkins coming back. They had Weeks coming back. They dipped into the portal, though, and got some other parts. And in my opinion, again, and I wrote this in the postandcourier.com, they looked faster than Clemson. They looked more physical than Clemson, and they looked more focused than Clemson throughout the entirety of that game. And they did something that I haven't seen happen in quite some time against the Tigers. They made Clemson an entirely one-dimensional football team, 31 yards rushing.
Yeah.
31 yards rushing. And even BK said, when you do something like that, they become predictable, and we've got them, and that's what happened. Cade Klubnik was the only option at that point, be it throwing or running, and Clemson didn't have a shot.
Yeah, it was a situation where they basically said Cade Klubnik's going to have to beat us with his arm. And again, when you have the trio of receivers they have, and I get it, Antonio Williams was injured, but still with Wesco and TJ Moore, those are still two very capable guys that can do a lot of damage, and it just didn't happen. And they kept Cade Klubnik under pressure that entire night. Just kind of look at the numbers here on Pro Football Focus. They kept him pressured on almost half of his dropbacks on Saturday night. He was only 50% through the air. He just didn't look great. And again, when you do make them one-dimensional and completely take the running game away, and look, Clemson's had the benefit of having some really good running backs past couple of years. Will Shipley, Phil Maffa. I don't know how a converted wide receiver into a running back as your main guy is going to go, but it didn't get off to a good start on Saturday night with Adam Randall.
When they started the game and I saw that he was RB1, I went, this is not going to go well. This is not going to go well. How do you fall short on recruiting a running back to keep that chain going? I mean, I don't understand. And let's dive in. Let's just go and throw it out there.
Sure.
Let's go ahead and throw it out there. Dabo's broke the seal with the portal now. He brought 3 transfer guys in.
Yep.
Did they try to get a running back? Did they have interest in a running back? I mean, the running back market seems to be pretty solid because there are a lot of running backs out there that won't work.
And here's the thing. If I'm a running back in the portal worth my weight in anything, I want to go to Clemson because they have a good reputation with their running game and putting guys into the NFL. So it would seem like a destination type of place for me if I was a running back looking for a new home. And again, I don't know if Dabo's ever going to admit to that or not, but for whatever reason, that didn't happen this offseason. And, you know, similarly to when DeCarrion Joyner was RB1 2 years ago for Carolina, we figured out pretty quickly, that's probably not going to work. Now, maybe we're just maybe it's a situation of LSU's defense was so good, it didn't matter who they were lining up against them. It wasn't going to happen. But I would be concerned out of the gate if I'm a Clemson fan. And look, I'm one of the people that I bought into the hype. I thought Clemson, what they had returning after what they did last year, was going to be one of the scariest teams in all of college football, and they very well could be. Again, it's only game number 1. We can't write anybody off as of right now, but not the greatest start offensively for them on Saturday.
And let's face it, point out a game on the Clemson schedule right now in which they're not going to be favored. Not Florida State, because we still got so much to unpack with that.
Sure.
But point out a game and tell me where they're not favored. And then we've already have evidence. We have proof that all you have to do is get to the ACC championship game, and they could still make the college football playoff. We had 2 teams last year make it. from the ACC. The ACC third of the Power Four schools. So their season is still out in front of them. And also, let's just look at this, Tyler. We saw them lose to Georgia last year.
Yep.
Went to the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, the third time in the last 4 years that Clemson's lost an opener. We're not talking about that enough.
And I go back to last year because that was a 34-3 victory, I believe, for Georgia in that game. And I remember coming here that Monday when we talked about Clemson saying, this is what happens when you don't embrace the new style of college football with the portal and all that kind of stuff. And again, Clemson, as the year went on, obviously won the games that they won and put themselves in a good position at the end of the year, played a dogfight of a game against Carolina, came up short, but still won the ACC and made their way into the college ball playoff. So if anything, the classic case of all your goals are still in front of you. That's very much the case here for Clemson. But I look at this and saying, okay, how much of a concern is this running game going to be for them as the season goes along? Because, again, that wasn't as much of an issue because you knew, and I don't remember how many yards Phil Maffa had against Georgia, but I don't think it was a great day. But you still knew his capabilities as a running back and that was probably going to improve as the season went along. I don't know if you can say the same thing about the unknown of Adam Randall right now.
And also just look, man. Everything they want to do is still in front of them. You're absolutely right. Thanks in large part because they are in the ACC. They're not in the SEC. They're not in the Big Ten. But this loss, though, feels especially damning because the perception. Last year, Clemson hadn't been to the playoff in a couple of years. The Georgia War Machine was coming off a 2-year run of dominance. It was more palatable for that loss. And, of course, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing that we have to keep in mind. The perception this year going into this, as you said, Clemson, national championship contender, legit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if they do what they did last year and get it back together, we'll view it through different lenses. Last year, they lost to Georgia. The offense was horrible. And then they went out and dropped 66 on Appalachian State, and that started a 6-game run where they scored 45.5 points a game.
Yep.
Now, if they do that again, what are we going to be saying about Clemson come November?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. But on the other side of things here, getting back to LSU, Garrett Nussmeier, that might have been his most impressive game as a starter in now just a little over a year. He looked every bit the part of a first-round draft pick type of guy, tons of throws, tons of smart plays. Probably should have had an additional touchdown pass to Barian Brown that got called back that I'm still trying to figure that one out, much like Nick Harbors yesterday for South Carolina. But nevertheless, played a great game and obviously helped LSU get the win.
Well, and let's go beyond that. And I have it in my column today, postcourier.com. I wrote about Lenore Sellers. Garrett Nussmeier, now according to FanDuel, the leader for Heisman.
I mean, as far as week one, week one performances against quality competition, those guys seem to be 1A and 1B. It's hard to argue with that. And again, we'll get to Arch and Texas and all that coming up here in a little bit, but not surprising that it's shifted in that favor, at least early on.
Here's what's interesting. You have Garrett Nussmeier 1, Sellers 2, Carson Beck 3, Gunnar Stockton 4.
Yeah.
Georgia QBU.
Yeah. Well, and again, Georgia played Marshall, so we'll see them against some quality competition coming here in a couple weeks. They had Austin Peay this weekend, so they'll probably put up a lot more stats against them. Carson Beck, I was skeptical of him going into this season coming off the injury, but he looked great last night in that win against Notre Dame. That was a really fun game to watch. I have a feeling this Heisman race is going to shift around a lot just in this first month alone. I don't know about you, but I always love appointing the September Heisman at the end of the first month of every single season, and it's rarely ever the guy that actually goes on to win the thing in December.
Leonard Fournette. I was polishing it for Leonard Fournette when he was at LSU, and that didn't work out too good.
No, it didn't.
Now, there are guys, you can't win the Heisman, but you can lose it in September.
I think I may have given it to Jalen Milroe last year, if I remember correctly. That or Ryan Williams, one of those guys. I can't remember.
I had Milroe on my ballot 2 years ago. I just thought he was fantastic. But I also, Dugan, Max Dugan, I voted for him a couple of years ago, too. I love that guy. I'm a Heisman voter. And I look at it differently than I do most awards. I mean, it's just a different thing to consider, leadership and how the team responds around you. I voted for Deshaun Watson when Lamar Jackson won. I had Jackson as my All-American quarterback, but I voted for Deshaun Watson because I waited until after the ACC championship game and they won the title. And he if they don't have Deshaun Watson, they don't do that. And just the way he performed. Now, in hindsight, given some of the stuff that's happened, maybe not. But I look at Heisman different, and what I saw at a Garrett Nussmeier looks very Heisman-esque.
Yeah, a great start of the season for him in LSU, and that makes you maybe just a little bit more worried about that trip to Baton Rouge coming up in the month of October. We'll continue to react to everything happening in week number 1 of college football as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic for South Carolina rolls on. Tyler Head, Scott Hamilton, the Post and Courier, and Ed Bird producing on the other side of the glass on your Monday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler and Scott Hamilton wrapping up hour number 1 on your Reaction Monday here on The Game. Want to remind you, you can get the craft beer card on 1075thegame.com for only $59. Save around $300. Just go to the Sweet Deals tab on our website, 1075thegame.com, and purchase yourself a craft beer card, maybe in celebration of yesterday's win over Virginia Tech. We talked about the LSU-Clemson game there, and similar to South Carolina, there was a glaring moment in the game that is getting a lot of conversation coming away from it in terms of what is a catch for touchdowns that got overruled. Now, I thought Nick Carber yesterday had a better case for a catch than what Barian Brown did in terms of how much the ball did move as he was going to the ground. But regardless, I still think both of those catches should have been considered touchdowns. They weren't. And when you read the rule itself, I get it, but at the same time, when you watch it, it's one of those things like, all right, how are we not considering these touchdowns?
I'll expand on that. I even thought that the catch by Xavion Thomas in the Clemson LSU game falls in the same zone of that. I mean, first to the South Carolina game, I thought it was a catch. I mean, he looked to make a football move after he had it. He never lost control of it. He crossed the plane. It was in that big old hand of his. Mm-hmm. How is that not a catch? But in the Clemson LSU game, Thomas, my only question was if it was a touchdown or if he was out of bounds at the half-yard line. Then he ruled it no catch. Mm-hmm. So there's no consistency across the board. And look, Tyler, we see this in the NFL for how long? I mean, aren't they?
It's been a point of conversation since the Dez Bryant catch against the Packers, which was 10 years ago. But, I mean, it's always been a problem. That just kind of like took it to another level. And since then, we've been like, oh, well, I don't know what a catch is. And even when the NFL's changed their, wording of the rule, it hasn't made it any clearer.
What is a catch?
I don't know, man. To me, it is, and you brought up one of the things that's in all these rules that bothers me to no end, and that is football move. Because I don't think we have defined what a football move is. It's just kind of like, oh, well, I know it when I see it type of thing.
Exactly. It's subjective. And I like this. And now, have you noticed on the replays, they don't say call on the field confirmed. It's upheld.
Yes, that was the new language they've changed to, and it's not stands. It's what did they change the stands to now? Is it something else? Or something upheld, like that. But yeah, now it's upheld instead of confirmed or whatever. Which, do we need that change? I don't know, but they did it anyway. But yeah, it's one of those things that just like I don't know, man. I hate that we have to have these conversations, but again, 2 significant games over the weekend plagued by these kind of things.
I think upheld is a way of like being more gentle with the referee because you'll have a replay and it'll be inconclusive. You can't for 100. Nobody. You can have 12 sets of eyeballs and they'll look at it and people still like, I don't know what the heck happened. Yep. So you say upheld, but if you say confirmed, then you are accountable. Yeah, okay, tell us why it's confirmed. Yeah, show us the evidence.
Yeah, you're basically saying, okay, we are 100% sure this is exactly what happened. So yeah, I guess saying upheld gives you a little bit of wiggle room, but in both those cases, they were ruled as catches and touchdowns and then overturned. And again, I go back to the Harbor one from yesterday where the ball moves as he hits the ground, but he never loses it. Like, okay, if the ball just flies out and hits a camera person, all right, fine. You can make a stronger argument that way, but he never lost control of it. And again, it goes back to the different standards depending on what you are in those situations, because if you're a ball carrier and you're stretching out and you get the tip of the ball over the goal line, regardless if a linebacker knocks it out of your hand half a second later, it's still a touchdown because you broke the plane. So to me, when Harbor gets 2, 3, 4, however many feet he got down in bounds, why isn't that automatically like the score regardless of what happens after that? Because again, to me, he established possession of the ball in bounds, got his feet in. That's supposed to be the extent of what it takes to be a touchdown.
He got 1 foot down. He got another foot down. He got another foot down. He got another foot down. And he's pulling the ball in his hand.
Yes.
In his hand. He's palming the football like Walter Payton. Like as he turns his body. It's like we broke it down like the Zapruder film, in the grassy knoll in Dallas, 1963. Yeah. He's rotating around with the ball in his hand. And I was sitting next to David Cloninger, my colleague at the Post and Courier, and I said, that's a catch. How is that not a catch? He's got control. Look at the grip he has on that ball. Now his balance, they started getting on his balance. He went down and so forth. But he broke the plane with the ball firmly in his hand. And to your point, you brought up a really good point about a ball carrier stretching across the goal line. Mm-hmm. What about when that ball carrier lands and it hits the ground? I mean, it's not really that much different than what Nick Harbor did.
Yeah. The ground can't cause a fumble, but it can apparently make a pass incomplete because the action of hitting the ground moved it. But again, he still held the ball to his body. So that's the thing.
Broke the plane.
And again, he was already in the end zone. He had caught it in the end zone and fell to the ground with the DB on him. I don't know. We're going to be running in circles about this for a long time to come, I'm sure. But that was one of the big talking points coming away from the weekend. Speaking of Nick Harbor, though, we'll get into what he did do on Sunday against Virginia Tech and why that's making a lot of people excited for the season that is to come. In hour number 2, it is the halftime show on Your Reaction Monday. Let us know your thoughts, 803-404-6100, Fire Subs text line, as well as the AAA Heating and Air phone lines here on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is hour number 2 of the halftime show. Tyler Head and Scott Hamilton of the Post and Courier along with you here on your Reaction Monday as we break down everything that happened over the weekend, not only in South Carolina's 24-11 victory over the Virginia Tech Hokies, but also everything else happening in week number 1. We're just there discussing the controversy of what is a catch and what's not a catch and what is a touchdown, what's not a touchdown. But don't let that overshadow what was a very successful day for Nick Harbor, who did end up pulling in 99 yards and 3 catches and a touchdown a little bit later on in the game that ended up sealing it for South Carolina. Ed Bird, if I could get cut number 39 here. This is Nick Harbor talking about something interesting. He had a drop earlier on in the game, and here's him talking about the process of putting that behind him and still going on to have a very strong game.
Yeah, I just gotta keep focused on the ball. I let go of the ball too early. Just trying to feel. Just gotta focus on the catch. Just guarantee the catch. That's what I did for the rest of the catches. Just guarantee. Make sure you've been catching a lot of balls all season. Like that's a routine catch. That was on me. I took the whole offense. That's on me. But I mean, you don't power over the ball. Being dropped because I feel like I'm gonna get more opportunities in the game. So last year I went at powder, but this year I came off the thing smiling like Coach Ferry didn't say nothing. Coach Beeman didn't say you gonna get more opportunities. Coach Shula didn't say nothing. So they all know it was just a routine play. I made a mistake on. I owned up to a mistake. Just from my.
The consistent word we use when talking about Nick Harbor and his time at Carolina is process, right? Everything's a process of becoming a wide receiver, of adapting to this two-sport lifestyle that he's been doing, that he, fortunately for South Carolina, opted to only do football this offseason. I thought that was going to help him out tremendously, and we saw that on Sunday as well. But, look, he's not the only receiver that dropped a ball this weekend. Jeremiah Smith, notably Ryan Williams, guys like that we think are the best in the sport, had their drops and share of rough performances over the weekend to start their season. So he's not alone in that aspect. But I do think it's interesting that he said, a year or so ago, that's something that would have affected me as the entire game went along. But he was able to put that behind him and go out there and still have a very strong performance. And again, should have had 2 touchdowns at the end of the day, but still 1 for 99 yards, or 1 and 99 yards is still a very, very good day regardless.
That's a fantastic day. And you know what? To that point that he's making, that it would have bothered him, it would have eaten him up. That's just him maturing into a football player. Last year, He was still the track guy making the transition. Now he's a football player. Nick Harbor's a football player now.
Yeah.
And what I saw yesterday with Sellers just slung it.
Yep.
Okay, he dropped back and he gave it every bit of arm he got, and the ball went up towards the Mercedes-Benz Stadium roof, and then dropped down. And I'm like, oh God! And then Nick Harbor hit a second gear. And he got past the defender, caught the ball. The defender's catching up, and then Nick Harbor looks like he's jogging, and the defender looks like he is absolutely just trying everything he can to keep up.
Yeah,
I can't get enough of watching this guy. I really can't. And if that's the moment where the light really kicks on for him, we might be about to see him fully evolve into what he can be.
I said yesterday, we've been waiting 3 years for that exact touchdown, right? Because the entire conversation around Nick Harbor with his track speed and all that is, hey, just tell him to run in a straight line on a go, throw it up to him. They'll never be able to catch him. And again, it's a lot more complicated than that. There's nuances to being a receiver. And even that, it wasn't like he was running a straight line. It was a post because he did cut back to the inside. But still, it was as close to that as we've seen in his time here at South Carolina. And you saw that speed on display. And when you go back and watch that play, they had 2 safeties playing down. So he was basically in a one-on-one and only had 1 man to beat. And he blows him off the line of scrimmage, gets that inside. And once he hits that post, he's, 5 yards ahead of the guy by the time he catches the ball, and then just takes off. Like, those are the kind of plays we've been waiting to see out of Nick Harbor, because that physical, athletic capability is there. It was getting the nuances of the receiver position to get him into those spots that he still needed to perfect. And again, it's only 1 play, but you saw that executed well on Sunday.
But and it's on film. It's on video now. And now every team out there that South Carolina is going to play, they're going to look at it. Look, they've been aware of Nick Harbor's capabilities,
sure,
but they've never seen it fulfilled. That right there says, okay, we have to take him seriously So the game plans now are going to be a little bit different, maybe a little more time on shutting him down or trying to keep that from happening to them. How can South Carolina benefit in other places? My concern is there a Simon who's going to be able to be the guy underneath that's going to pick up those passes? Are they going to start expanding things with the running backs? You know, can the Faison catch a pass? How is he out in the flat? That's what I want to see.
I will say, I think we saw a lot of good things out of Brady Hunt yesterday as well. Of course, Josh Simon was that safety blanket for Sellers last year, ended up leading the team in receiving a season ago. And you lose him, obviously, out of eligibility. But we heard a lot in the offseason that Sellers and Brady Hunt had a really good rapport with each other. And through that scripted drive, mainly, and by the way, who had Maurice Brown catching the first pass of the season? Absolutely nobody. But they utilized the tight ends pretty well in that first drive and throughout the game too. And Brady Hunt had a lot of those really key catches from that group. And it seems like he's kind of in that same kind of role that Josh Simon was a year ago, catching stuff short, making things happen afterwards, and obviously playing his role as tight end. He's the one that sprung the block for Sellers to get the touchdown on the first drive as well. So playing really well in multiple aspects of being a tight end.
I wonder if the next time they script the opening series, instead of coming out and they have dink, 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 if they just go ahead and say, you know what, we've got this skinny post pattern with the big guy out there. Let's go ahead and just open up the game right now and see what happens.
I mean,
I would be all for that.
You certainly could do that. I liked the dink and dunk because it worked. And again, going back to what we said a little bit earlier, I don't know if Mike Shule is one of those guys, because again, it's been so long since he has been calling plays. I don't know if he's one of those guys that takes what he learns on that opening script and uses it for the entire game plan, or if he has an idea to just feature these things early and then pepper them in throughout the game. Regardless, what he did worked on that first drive, got away from a lot of those things as the game went on, and as he got into the fourth quarter and things started to pick up a little bit, you saw those things kind of come back in. So maybe that's something you kind of learn from in terms of what your next game plan is going to be, particularly, you know, when you get into SEC play coming up here in a couple weeks. But I saw plenty of good things on that opening drive that I want to see more of, because at the end of the day, it works. It doesn't have to be flashy, doesn't have to be spectacular, but if you're moving forward and getting yards and getting first downs and eventually getting in the end zone, you're doing your job.
Again, what are they going to do about the offensive line?
Here's my thing, and Wes brought up a really good point in the 11 o'clock hour. So Shed Surratt, it did seem like was going to be your starting left guard. And again, we didn't get a depth chart last week, or else we could have potentially known, or an injury report for that matter, that he was banged up and didn't even travel with the team over the weekend, because we said this at the end of last week, or the middle of last week, when he got put on that list for I think the Walter Payton like freshman of the year or something like that, where it's like, well, you don't get on that list if they don't think you're going to play. So there's got to be somebody on the inside saying, hey, this guy's probably going to be your starting left guard, so he's going to have the opportunity to earn an award like that. So we were kind of saying, hey, maybe he's your starting guy coming up this weekend. Again, we didn't know he was dealing with an injury before Sunday. So you have Rodney Newsome out there, struggled in the first half. You make the switch to Marky Anderson, and you know his results seemed fine when he was out there in the third and fourth quarter. I don't remember anything egregious from him in terms of messing something up, but it's the other spots that do concern me, particularly Josiah Thompson at left tackle, because the anticipation was that he was going to take significant steps forward in the second year. We love to use the Caden Proctor example at Alabama, because look, left tackle behind quarterback is probably the toughest position you can play on the field, right? You're always dealing with edge rushers. You're protecting your quarterback's blind side more often than not. And Caden Proctor struggled in year one at Alabama. Year two was a whole lot better. So we said, okay, Josiah Thompson maybe is that same type of guy where that second year is going to be that much more better. And it's only one game, and Virginia Tech may have the best pass rush in all of the ACC, and we're just not thinking of it that way right now. But it did seem like a lot of the same things we saw out of Josiah Thompson a year ago were there on Sunday. And the most egregious play, even Cole Kubelik pointed this out on Twitter, was when he and Newsome had the double team. I forget on which defensive lineman for Virginia Tech, and he got by both of them pretty effortlessly.
I wrote that. I said that was the ugliest moment of the big uglies. He split the double team to pop the ball loose and darn near Lenore Sells' hand from his shoulders. And you know, fortunately Thompson jumped on the ball, but it was a 14-yard loss. I mean, it's better than a turnover, but still, shame on them. I mean, this was a transfer from Georgia Southern.
Yeah.
that split a double team of two SEC offensive linemen.
Yep.
That's not good, Tyler. It's not acceptable, bro.
It's not. And again, maybe you give them not a pass, but you consider the fact that what was probably anticipated to be one of your starting offensive linemen was not in there. And we all know offensive line units move as one. So even if you have just one guy missing, that can throw everything off. So maybe if Shetzerat's in there, everybody plays a whole lot better. But I lean towards this unit has unfortunately not earned the benefit of the doubt, right? Because it's something that's been a consistent problem in the Beamer era, even going back before that, particularly talking about these last, 5 years now. It's something that, look, we keep hearing about. Now, I've been here for 3 years. I've heard about the Great Wall of Carolina since I've been here. They recruited well. They brought in a good guys from the transfer portal, seemingly. They put guys in the NFL on the offensive line, but something about when they get out there on Saturdays or Sunday in yesterday's case, something's still not right there that they're just trying to figure out.
I don't know what. Is it personnel? Is it
I don't know.
Scheme? Sometimes you don't, and sometimes you can have the players and it's the scheme. Sometimes you have the players and if they don't mesh with the play caller.
Yeah.
I think it might be a mix of the two, or maybe I don't think it's the offensive. I don't think it's the weight room. I don't think it's training. Because most of the time, linemen take a while to grow.
Sure.
Okay, they do. You got to recruit them. You got to bring them in, get them bigger, faster, stronger, all that. Unless you hit the portal now. How's Carolina doing with regards to the portal with bringing in guys? And is it a destination for offensive linemen? What do you do to make it attractive? We talk about Clemson not going out and getting running backs.
Sure.
I know South Carolina brought a couple of linemen in. Did they miss?
Yeah. I don't know. And you bring up the point about that double team that led to South Carolina being in the, 2nd and 33, I think it was. And the next play was when Rasul Faison took it 30 yards. But even on that play, when you go back and watch, Rodney Newsome was the pulling guard on that play and completely missed the free runner coming off the edge that fortunately Faison was able to sidestep and turn into a 30-yard gain, or else that could have been 3rd and 35 instead of 3rd and 2.
And you know what? And the saving grace of that is I think Faison had 1 yard on 3 carries up until that point. And then we saw the hype. Everything sure. that we've been expecting and wondering was on that play. But to your point, that was all him.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
that was all him. And Sellers, a lot of his runs, those were all him.
They were.
There was no push up the middle. And it's a concern because there will come a time, especially during the SEC schedule, where they are going to have a traditional run game between the tackles, probably, in order to win a game. It's going to happen. Mark my words.
And again, so much of that Virginia Tech team was brand new, so maybe they end up being better than we thought. But I look at so many other teams that are on your schedule this year saying, well, I'm pretty sure they're going to have a better front seven, better pass rush, better run defense than what you had against Virginia Tech. So you got to figure things out. Again, I'm not trying to grossly overreact because it is week 1 and things can obviously improve, but that does certainly concern me coming away from game number 1. We'll continue to react to South Carolina and Clemson or South Carolina and Virginia Tech, as well as everything else that happened over the weekend in week number 1. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. On your Reaction Monday, Tyler Head, Scott Hamilton from the Post and Courier on the game.
mean, it always feels good to get a win. It's a hard win. It's a good team. A lot of tradition, a lot of history in that program. Just to go out, fight like we did, and come through in the fourth quarter, I mean, just felt good.
Welcome back in. Halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic for South Carolina. Tyler Head and Scott Hamilton. The Post and Courier along with you here on your reaction Monday on the game. That was the voice of Lenora Sellers yesterday talking about just the feeling of winning a game, starting the season 1-0, which fortunately they've now done in all but 1 year in the Coach Beamer era. But, Scott, this is something we talked about a lot last week leading into this game. Historically speaking, Coach Beamer teams play some of their worst football in week number 1. And, again, yesterday was not perfect. There's certainly plenty of things to work on. But that was by far the best this team has looked overall coming out of the gate, I would say, to start a season since Beamer's been the head coach here.
I think back, was it Old Dominion last year?
It was.
That they opened up.
Hard to forget.
I mean, we had some major concerns.
Oh, yeah.
After that game last year. I'm sitting there thinking, oh, my God, this is not going to go well. This is going to be bad. And then, of course, we know how the season ultimately went. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, they were prepared. I mean, okay, to come out like they did with that opening drive eclipsed everything they did in the season opener last year. They cobbled together an offense in that game. They came out fluid, looking good, focused. It was really impressive. I'm just, again, wondering how are they going to shore up some of these areas. And maybe it's just a situation of getting reps. Because, offensive line, I hate to keep harping about it, but you have to work together. It is a unit. It is not a collection of individuals. It is one entity. And the only way you get really good at it is by doing it together over and over and over. I know they've had spring practice. I know they had fall camp. I get that. But that's different than game conditions. And also you have to wonder, Mike Shula, knowing what the offensive line is capable of, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are in actual game competition, game conditions. So it's a moving target. And I'm hopeful that what we saw yesterday, still a win. Let's not lose sight of that. They still won the game.
Yeah, they did.
But I'm hopeful that what we saw yesterday, though, is merely the starting point, and it's going to look very different in 2 weeks when Vanderbilt comes, or by the time they go to LSU, which could be for some significant things there.
Sure.
So I'm hopeful for that. They're going to continue to evolve.
Yeah, no, and again, speaking of starting points, this is the best starting point I think we've seen in a while for this team, with still improvements to make and work to do in certain areas, obviously. But I'll take this compared to the start of last year, start of 2023, even going back to the wins over Georgia State and, Eastern Illinois, going back to Beamer's first year. Those were just teams that, of course, your roster is better than, which is why you won those games the way that you did. But even then, Georgia State, you were down the third quarter of that game and took some effort there in the second half to finally pull away and have a comfortable win there. But I don't think, I don't think any team is completely satisfied with every single week 1 win. Even some of the bigger games that happened over this weekend, the winning team still has work to do in certain areas. But you got off to a better start than you have, and that's something that you hope you can build off of. Again, you get into SEC play, I don't want to say easy, but easier than it could have been if, let's say, LSU was week number 3, and then, Oklahoma was week number 4. You got Vanderbilt, Kentucky, and Missouri in your first 5 weeks of the season. That's a little bit of an ease in, especially after watching Kentucky a little bit over the weekend. You've got a nice ease into your gauntlet that comes up in the middle of October and into November.
And then you have Clemson coming to Columbia to cap it all off.
You do.
So the schedule works out wonderfully for South Carolina as long as they keep trending in this direction. And look, I'll say it one more time. It was a win. And there are a whole lot of teams out there, including one just about 100 miles or so up the road, that wishes they were 1-0 today instead of 0-1.
Yes. No, absolutely. And again, we'll see how this looks in the next couple of weeks. We're not going to be able to take a lot away from this Saturday against against SC State, but I'm so glad that you had a game like this in week number 1, because it's a good litmus test of where you're at. And again, both these teams, speaking of Virginia Tech as well, both these teams are going to look vastly different by the time the season ends. And hey, maybe Virginia Tech's really good and they go 9-3 and are a threat for the college football playoff in the ACC championship game. I don't know. I'm not betting on that happening, but it could happen considering all that's changed for them in the offseason. So maybe we look back on this game later and say, wow, you really handled a really, really good Virginia Tech team and, kept them out of the end zone. I don't know if that's going to be the case or not, but I do like, and again, the LSU game obviously still looks scary, even scarier after what they did to Clemson, but I still like your chances in most, if not all, these games to at least be. I don't look at anybody saying, well, yeah, they're definitely going to just steamroll South Carolina. And a couple years ago, that wasn't the case. You were taking on the Georgias and stuff in the world, and it's like, all right, try not to get beaten by 30 points in this one.
Well, the infrastructure of the program's different now. The expectations are different now. And it's just the way everything about this program has shifted so much over the last 5 years is incredible. I mean, you go back to 2021. Shane Beamer hired that winter 2020, 2021. If you would have told anybody that this would be the expectation of South Carolina football to play in a preseason game against an ACC opponent, to be 1-0, to have a Heisman Trophy contending quarterback, in 4 years, this is the expectation. They would have said you were nuts.
Sure.
They would have said you were crazy. But that's where we are.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And again, good starting point of the season. And, hopefully this is setting the table for another successful year. And when you have the defense figured out, and again, there was elements of the defense that certainly need some work. Talk about the secondary and stuff like that not having their best day yesterday. But when you have a good defense, everything else can fall in line. And again, last year's defense was historic in a lot of ways, and there's a reason why half those guys are now playing in the NFL. But it didn't really seem like you skipped too much of a beat yesterday with the new guys filling in a lot of those roles. Again, that linebacker room, if you took the jersey numbers and nameplates off, I really couldn't have told you that much of a difference between this unit and the one you had a year ago.
Yeah, and having continuity for the most part with coaching-wise.
Yes.
With that, having Clayton know what levers. They know what their player looks like, skill-wise, physicality, build-wise, and they're able now to say, okay, these are the kind of dudes we need to run the defense the way we want, and they're getting them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, again, South Carolina State's upcoming weekend, and then you'll get into the SEC slate coming up after that with Vanderbilt coming to town in 2 weeks. Scott, appreciate you hanging out as always. I believe we'll be talking to you a little bit later on in the week as we get set for week number 2.
I'll do anything for you, Tyler.
Appreciate it, and we'll see you later. It is the halftime show on your Reaction Monday. We want to hear your thoughts as well. 803-404-6100. Hit us up on the Firehouse Subs text line as well as the AAA Heating and Air phone lines as a breakdown not only what happened with South Carolina yesterday, picking up the 24-11 win over Virginia Tech, but also everything else happening around the college football world. And oh boy, did we have some interesting games, which we'll dive back into coming up next. It is the halftime show here in the game.
And they get a big one.
Here's Castellanos to the outside, inside the 5, diving into that end zone with a stride. Touchdown, Knowles. Tommy Castellanos.
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head along with you here on your Reaction Mondays, and we look back at South Carolina's 24-11 win over Virginia Tech, but also everything else that happened in week 1 of college football, and perhaps no more surprising result than what happened down in Tallahassee. You just heard Joe Tessitore in the call there of Tommy Castellanos. We call him Tommy now. He was Thomas when he was at BC. Tommy Castellanos running for the touchdown there early to tie the game up 7-all in the first quarter against Alabama. And it kind of looked like, okay, this could be kind of a nip-tuck, back-and-forth type of game between two good teams. And again, Florida State a year ago was awful, 2-10. They went out and completely revamped their entire team via the transfer portal. So we didn't know what they were going to look like. And what they looked like on Saturday was really good. And they won, picking up a huge win to make their fan base believe, if nothing else, once again. They stormed the field on Saturday because Alabama was numbered 8 and all those kind of things. But the story of this game isn't necessarily how good Florida State looked, and they looked pretty good. It was how bad Alabama looked, right? And we're still, and I don't blame people for this because I'm the same way, we still think about a Nick Saban-era Alabama team, because he was there for 17 years. He's only been gone for a little over a year now since retiring, but we still think about Alabama in that same way. And I, in checking projections and listening to podcasts and stuff leading into the season, there's a lot of people that had Alabama picked as their national championship team. If nothing else, there are many people that picked them to at least go to Atlanta for the SEC championship. And look, all those goals are still in front of them. And this is the balance of week 1 to try and not overreact, but not underreact either, which is kind of tricky because all these teams are going to change as the season goes along. But what I saw out of Alabama on Saturday is something that I don't think can be fixed very easily. They lacked physicality. They got bullied for 4 quarters of that game. If you scroll through your Twitter timeline, you can inevitably come across several clips and highlights of guys either not trying on plays, jogging while the play is still happening, or guys just getting completely run over by guys on the Florida State offensive line or linebackers or whatever it may be. It just looked like a very poor team effort overall for Alabama. And the reason why I say that's something that can't change as much overnight is because your physicality and the way that you play the game that way is determined by your offseason program, by your strength and conditioning. That's not something that Kalen DeBoer can walk in to the football facility today and say, okay, guys, we got to be more physical out there. Let's go do it. And everybody's like, oh, okay, well, we'll just do that. And no, that's something that has to be ingrained in the identity of your team over the long portion of the offseason to see it happen in a game and over the course of a season. You can't just flip a switch and suddenly become a more physical team. It doesn't work that way, which is what concerns me about what I saw out of Alabama on Saturday. And cut number 25 here, Ed Bird, Kalen DeBoer, as you would expect him to say, saying basically, this isn't acceptable.
I choose to believe we got a good football team, but we can't play on our heels. That falls on everyone. I don't just point the finger at the players, but we got to, we talked in the locker room. There's no excuse about what happened. We step on the football field. They step on the football field, and we got to play ball. We got to play our style of ball. Last year isn't this year, and it's going to be an uphill climb for us, but you can't think of it in the big scope of things. You got to focus on the moment, and the next moment is what happens tomorrow.
And for Kalen DeBoer, you also have to deal with the fact that you are losing support by the second in Tuscaloosa, right? Look, nobody ever wants to be the guy that follows the guy. I've been working in sports radio for, what year is this, 2025, for 7 years now. And in my entire time in professional sports radio, I did college radio before that, so even longer. In my entire time doing sports radio, years before we ever knew that Nick Saban's career, when Nick Saban's career was going to end, we always discussed, no matter what radio station I was on, you never want to be the guy that follows the greatest head coach of all time, because everything you do is going to get compared directly to him, which means people's patience with you is going to run very thin very quickly. And that's exactly the situation that Kalen DeBoer's got himself in at Alabama right now. 9-3 last year on the cusp of the playoff. That's acceptable for a lot of teams around the country. That was a fantastic year by South Carolina standards, but South Carolina also was a team that was on, or has been on the rise the past couple years. Alabama has been at the mountaintop. They only won a national championship as recently as 5 years ago. They should, in a 12-team playoff, be in that every single year by the standards of what they recruit at, what they coach at, and how good that program's historically been. And to miss that in year number one, unacceptable from an Alabama standpoint. Then to back that up and go on the road and look as awful as you did on Saturday. I know it was only a 14-point game, but that score should have been a whole lot bigger based on the way Alabama played that game on Saturday. If I'm an Alabama fan, I don't know where I turn to for hope in this instance, right? And couple with that, Ty Simpson, who was the leader at quarterback the entire offseason, got named however long ago, and we all questioned, okay, you know, is this a situation where he's a guy that's just been on campus for a very long time, patiently waited his turn, and he's going to step into that new role and thrive? Or is it a guy that, well, he's only here because he wasn't good enough to go anywhere else? Maybe it's the latter. Again, it's week number one. I'm not trying to overreact to anything right now. I'm just going off of what I saw in 60 minutes of football on Saturday. But he looked scared. He looked terrified. He looked like the pressure was getting to him and the moment was way too big for him. And that's something else similar to, the physicality that you play with, that you can't just change overnight, right? You can't just go up to him and say, hey, Ty, I know you were kind of nervous out there, but don't be next week, as they play UL Monroe. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. You either have it between the ears or you don't. And I didn't like what I saw out of Ty Simpson on Saturday. Excuse me. Couple with that, somebody that you would think was going to help out your new starting quarterback, Ryan Williams, didn't have a great day either. I know he, at the end of the game, got hit, had the concussion, but he had a shaky game. He was dropping passes. He wasn't looking great in the receiving game, and maybe that goes back into the physicality thing if he wasn't playing with the physicality that he needed to in that game against Florida State. But all in all, there's a very, very poor showing for Alabama in week number one, and credit to Florida State because, look, we've all had our fun at their expense this offseason given how awful last year was for them. None of us picked them to win that game. I think we all looked at it as, well, the best case scenario is maybe you lose by 3 points on a last-second field goal or something like that, but we didn't see any conceivable way where they were going to go out there and dominate Alabama in the way that they did. And give credit to Tommy Castellanos, man. We've spent a lot of the offseason having fun at the expense of what he had to say, right? Where he said back in the summer, I think he was talking on 3, hey, Nick Saban ain't there to save him anymore. I'm going to go out there and run circles around him. And again, it's that Alabama brain where we think about these things through the lens of a Nick Saban team where we say, oh, my God, they're going to make him wish he was never born for saying that. And Dante Lawson and other guys that represented Alabama at the SEC Media Days, a little over a month ago, they all said the same thing, like, hey, disrespect to be handled accordingly. I think a lot of us were tuning in to that game on Saturday to see if they were going to knock his head off of his shoulders and make him pay for what he said. Didn't happen. He ran all over them. He didn't have to do anything spectacular through the air. And that's another thing here. The mark of really good Alabama teams is the ability to stop the run, and they did the opposite of that on Saturday. 230 yards on the ground from Florida State on 49 carries. That's averaging 4.7 yards a carry, and all 4 of their touchdowns did come via the ground game. And look, I know Gus Malzahn was not the greatest head coach from his time at Auburn. They certainly had their moments, or his time at UCF, where he was well on his way to potentially getting fired before he resigned and went on to become the head coach, or went on to become the play caller over at Florida State. But man, this guy knows how to beat Alabama. And what he did on Saturday with all that pre-snap movement and motion and all that kind of stuff, it had Alabama cross-eyed that entire game. And he kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it because they didn't show the ability to stop it consistently. And that's obviously what won. So it's such an interesting dynamic shift because I think we looked at this game going into the weekend as like, man, if Florida State loses this game by a couple scores, their fan base is going to be absolutely distraught and ready to run Mike Norvell out of town, when at the end of the day, the opposite happened. You have a distraught fan base in Alabama, and what Paul Feinbaum goes live here at 3 o'clock on the SEC Network, I'm sure those phones are going to be ringing off the hook of everybody trying to run Kalen DeBoer out of town as soon as possible, because as of right now, it's not working, right? You probably saw the stat over the weekend. Nick Saban had 4 losses to unranked teams in 17 years at Alabama. Kalen DeBoer has had 4 in 14 games as their head coach. Completely unacceptable. They can't do anything remotely right on the road, it seems like. And, well, at the end of the day, it probably makes you feel a whole lot better about October 25th when they're coming in here for homecoming, right? And again, not trying to overreact too much because it is week number 1 and teams can and will change. But, man, I need to see something significantly better out of Alabama in the next couple weeks for me to change my thought process that I think South Carolina is going to be in a really good spot when the old Crimson Tide roll into town coming up on October 25th. So we'll see what happens there. There was also the Texas-Ohio State game that in and of itself created a lot of conversation coming away from it. We'll dive into that coming up next as well, as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina rolls on in your Reaction Monday. Tyler Head and Ed Bird on the game.
Looks like they're going to do the tush push, and they don't get in. Ohio State does it again. Nebraska, Penn State last year. And right now, Texas.
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, along with you, wrapping up hour number 2. And there's Gus Johnson from Vox Sports, losing his mind as always, for good reason on that play, as Ohio State has the goal line stand on 4th and goal to prevent Arch Manning from tush pushing his way into the end zone early in that game against Ohio State on Saturday, battle of number 1 and number 3, as Ohio State hangs on to win that game 14-7 on the back of a really, really good defensive performance. We'll get to the Arch thing coming up here in a minute, but I always try my best to talk about the winners first, because I think when you win the game, you deserve the most credit. That defense was great. And look, we've all had our fun at the expense of Matt Patricia for how his last couple of years in the NFL have gone. But I think overall, he put together a phenomenal game plan, for that game on Saturday and dealing with Arch Manning and that Texas offense. And in fact, let's hear from the guy with the pencil behind his ear. Cut number 28 here, Ed. This is Matt Patricia on his defensive coordinator debut in college.
But, always appreciative of my situation, always glad to be out there to be able to coach and coach great players here at Ohio State. The thing about college, again, like I think I mentioned this during camp, I think I really appreciate those preseason games now. I really do, because there's definitely things in the game today. It's like operationally, communication-wise, and all that stuff. And, the sideline gets a little nuts. There's a lot of players out there. It's not the, 40-some that are in an NFL active roster. So, but like I said, just a great environment. It's loud, man. This place is loud. I love it. I absolutely love it. The fans, you don't get that kind of, noise in an NFL game. So I'm super appreciative of that. I'm going to play home every game. If we can figure that out, that'd be great. I'd be really excited about that.
One of the things we talked about going into this game was the fact that Arch Manning was going to be starting his first career road game in his college career. And that in and of itself is obviously going to be an intimidating thing, and going on the road to a place like Ohio State is obviously not easy when you deal with the crowd and all that kind of stuff, the atmosphere and environment. So the idea was, okay, we're going to try and rattle this guy and make him beat us. If he's a superstar, he's a superstar, and we'll deal with those repercussions. But they kept him under pressure constantly throughout that entire game. He only completed half of his passes under pressure in that game, and ended up throwing the interception there as well, which is just a really, really bad throw, and off throws as well. Think about that, the third down right before they turned it over on downs there at the very end of the game, where he threw it behind his receiver who could have caught it and got the first down there. It's those kind of little things where they were just constantly keeping him under pressure and forcing him into making mistakes, which can happen for a guy making only his third career start. And let's be honest, first start in a real big-time contest against a really, really good team like Ohio State. So credit being due to Ohio State for coming out of the gate, as strong as they did. Look, offensively, they weren't wow, right? Julian Sayin only played a little bit better than Arch Manning did. He didn't have the interception, so he had one less mistake than Manning did, but he wasn't phenomenal. And Jeremiah Smith, who we look at as perhaps the best overall player in college football as of right now, and very well could be on his way to winning a Heisman Trophy if he can back up the numbers that he did a season ago. His game wasn't all that great either. Had some key drops early in the game, was very frustrated with himself and all that kind of stuff. But here's the thing, and this is what gives me a lot of optimism for South Carolina, is even when your offense maybe isn't firing on all cylinders, as we saw with both South Carolina and Ohio State over the weekend, when you have good defense, they're always going to keep you in the game. Because, we went 3 and out, we punted or whatever, but our defense is going to be able to hold and get us the ball back. And that's exactly what Ohio State did over the weekend, save for the one drive at the end of the game where Texas did get the first down and, then kind of make it, or did get the touchdown and kind of make it interesting, where you thought there was a chance that maybe they could have some kind of comeback there at the very end. That obviously didn't end up happening. But, Ohio State, again, you're still got a young quarterback that's, only going to be making a second start this upcoming weekend, that we're going to see how he continues to improve. And I think Smith and guys like that are going to be fine. It was first game jitters for everybody, because as Patricia alluded to a moment ago, unfortunately don't play any preseason games in college football. But I think Ohio State still looks as good as ever when it comes to the defensive side of things that could set them up to be another one of the favorites to be in that mix to win the national championship once again. And for Texas, I know Arch Manning has plummeted as far as, his odds for the Heisman Trophy and all that kind of stuff. That's the least of his, concerns as of right now. It's about taking what you can from game number one, learning from that experience and making it better as the season goes along. Because here's the thing, they've got a lot of high-level games to play this year. They're going to be playing Georgia. They're going to be playing against Florida, teams like that. So he better learn quickly, and he better take what he learned from this game and use it as a way to improve. I don't think he's cooked or anything like that. And again, I'm not trying to overreact to anything after week number one, but we've seen plenty of quarterbacks, Sellers included last year, get better as the season goes along, and I think that'll be a case for Arch Manning as well. Just not the best first big start of his college career as full-time starter there at Texas, and we'll see what the next couple weeks have in store for him as they begin SEC play. 2 hours in the books, one more hour to go. Reaction Monday. Let us know your thoughts, 803-404-6100 here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head along with you here on your Reaction Monday on the game. Ed Bird producing on the other side of the glass. We'll get thoughts from our guy Jamie Bradford coming up here at 2:15 as he was in attendance in Atlanta to see South Carolina pick up the victory over Virginia Tech. So we'll get his thoughts from being there inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium and also just kind of assess this team as a whole and what we have learned from week number 1 so far. And again, things are going to change a lot as the season goes along. What happens in week 1 is not set in stone. Again, a year ago, this day, Reaction Monday after game number 1 a year ago, which I guess technically would have been, September 2nd, if I'm thinking a year ago. So a year ago tomorrow, but you know what I mean. A lot of people, including some of you on the text line and the phone lines and stuff like that, were saying, I don't know if the Sellers guy is the answer at quarterback because he looked pretty bad, pretty shaky against Old Dominion in week number 1, and obviously he rounded into being one of the best quarterbacks we've seen at Carolina and has the potential to cement that legacy with another strong showing this upcoming season. So a lot can change, which is why I'm trying to not overreact to anything specifically for the Carolina game or these other games outside of maybe Alabama's lack of physicality, because I don't think that's something that you can, completely change on a dime right in the middle of the season, especially once the season has began. But, we'll see what happens. Again, this game was significant in a lot of reasons for South Carolina, and I love the fact that they opted to play a Power 4 opponent in week number 1 where we could get an idea of what this team is right out of the gate. And let's say you flip the schedule and put SC State in week number 1 and Virginia Tech in week number 2, where Carolina, as I expect them to do this weekend, probably goes out there and wins that game pretty handily. You get backups in. Hey, we'd be able to see Cutter Woods and Aaron Nolan and, a lot more of these freshmen that came in and stuff like that, which is fine. But I wouldn't come away from that game knowing a lot about this team, right? As opposed to playing a Power 4 team. And look, Virginia Tech is not the standard of Power 4 right now. They're not the favorite to win the ACC by any means. Could that change over the course of the year? Sure. But still, they are a Power 4 opponent that is in that upper echelon of FBS, just like all the other Power 4 schools are. And it's a quality opponent to gauge yourself against. And again, I think they could end up being a decent team based on some of the things that I saw yesterday. I don't know if they're going to go out there and win the ACC, but the opinions of them are going to change as the season goes along. But regardless, it's a good measuring stick for where you're at to start the season. And obviously, this game held extra meaning for Shane Beamer, given the fact that it was against Virginia Tech, which you would think it was almost like, oh, well, that was a game that they scheduled when Beamer got here. No, this game was on the books long before Beamer was ever the head coach. It just happened to be the perfect coincidence that it's his alma mater, the place that his dad made his legendary career coaching at, that now has a statue out in front of. And that was a lot of conversation going into this game, was significance of it, his parents being honored before the game and all those kind of things. And if I could get cut number 10 here, Ed, this is Coach Beamer talking after the game yesterday in his post-game presser about what the experience of this week leading up to the game was like for him.
Awesome. I've tried to just, focus on what's important, and that's, staying in the moment and helping our players perform well today. First games are always extra tough, in my opinion, just the newness and first games. We had 15 true freshmen in uniform today that had never been here, a bunch of new transfers that were playing their first game in a Gamecock uniform. So it was a lot of, unknown and nerves, but then you just add the emotions of it. But, I think I did okay during the week, and I talked to the team on Tuesday. I didn't want there to be any question about where my emotions were. I wanted to dominate this football game and go win it, and told those guys that early in the week, and proud of them for, having each other's backs and having my back and finding a way to win it in the fourth quarter.
And, Beamer, I think it was at the Birdies with Beamer, I guess over a month ago before camp started, where he said then, like, man, I just want to get this game out of the way. I don't want to have to deal with, all the things surrounding it, right? And it's not that those are bad things, but they're distractions at the end of the day if you're a football coach to, hey, tell us about your favorite story of playing for your dad or coaching with your dad or whatever, your memories of being at BT and all those kind of things, and what exactly all that meant to him. So I know he's glad that he's glad that's all put behind him. And this game was also for him an opportunity to really put things in perspective of where he was and where he is now in his coaching career. And I wanted to play this cut as well. Cut number 16 here, Ed. Here's Coach Beamer talking about kind of taking it all in and appreciating everything, not only with this matchup itself against Virginia Tech, but being the fact that this game was played in Atlanta too.
Just proud of our players and how they played. I remember just, it's not to, pat myself on the back or give myself accolades, but I really appreciate our players, telling me in the fourth quarter, we got your back, coach, and we got this one. We got it for you and all that as well. And that means a lot. It's just it's a great group of young men in that locker room. I'll remember just the gratitude that I have for my time at Virginia Tech, growing up, playing there, coaching there, the gratitude that I have for the unbelievable, fan base and people in this program here at Carolina and my family that's here. I'm very blessed, Mark, not to get, cheesy and all that, but I got up like I always do and go, running this morning at like 6:30, and we were staying downtown, and I ran down to Georgia Tech's campus. And, I got into coaching in this city 26 years ago, I guess now, back in the year 2000, as a young graduate assistant at Georgia Tech. Didn't know a darn thing and just trying to hope I could get a job one day, coaching football somewhere. And saw the window where my old office was and walked up in the outside of the stadium, and then went running down to where the practice fields were. And just gratitude that, 26 years ago to get into this profession. Just hoping to, get a job, and then here I am 26 years later to be coaching in the SEC at a special place like South Carolina. It's, pretty cool.
So that's really cool to hear. Again, cool for him to experience that and, be in a place where his coaching career started against a team that he obviously has the family and ties to and his own playing days and all that kind of stuff. So that's neat to see. And again, it seems like he handled the emotions of it well. I know his dad was wearing the Carolina, I think it was a jacket, like pullover type thing before the game that I'm sure the Virginia Tech faithful were probably not pleased about seeing that, and their legendary coach repping the other team, but understandable from the standpoint of, hey, it's my son's team. I'm obviously going to support him in in what he does. And now you do put this game behind you. Now you say, okay, move on to the next thing. Now we're focused on SC State and obviously SEC play coming up here in a couple weeks' time. It's starting off with Vanderbilt coming here the following Saturday. So a great all-around experience, I'm sure it was, for Beamer and family and everybody being there and, walking out of there with a victory, which at the end of the day is the most important thing and gives you a lot to build off of going into, these next couple weeks to start the season. But as we kind of bounce around to other things happening, we talked about the Ohio State and the Texas game on Saturday as well. The lead into that game, it was on a different network, obviously, but was the final College Game Day for Lee Corso. And as many of us expected, cut number 33 here, Ed, Lee Corso decided to once again pick the Buckeyes.
All right, this is one of the easiest picks I've ever made. Texas is loaded. Texas is number one. They have a Manning at quarterback. Poor Ohio State. They ain't got a chance. Give me my first love.
Oh, there it is. Here it comes.
So there's Lee Corso picking Ohio State as he did for the first time back on October 5th, 1996 for the final time on Saturday in front of the entire stadium. And I thought it was really cool the way that they set that up. And we knew they were going to do something big. And, for a game that kicked off at noon, they were going to have to be inside the stadium because that's how they always do that. Because guess what? The crowd's inside the stadium. You don't have a bunch of people standing around outside. Though I think for Lee Corso's final headgear, they probably still would have gotten a really good crowd outside if they had stayed out there. But it's cool that Ohio State was able to organize that with them to where you had the ESPN desk at the middle of the field, The band spelled out Corso behind him. The entire arena, or excuse me, stadium could hear him through the loudspeakers and was able to react to him making that pick. And I believe he went perfect on his picks as well. So going out a winner on all fronts. All the schools that he coached at previously all also won on Saturday, and he was the only one that picked Florida State to beat Alabama. Of course, that being his alma mater. So he knocked it out of the park. I thought, College Game Day did a phenomenal job with the way that they set the show up, and you knew they were going to make it very, very special, with the tributes and all that kind of stuff and callbacks to great moments. They had other mascots running around on the set, and just allowed everybody there to share their experiences and their thankfulness for Coach Corso and everything that he did for College Game Day and the sport of college football as well. And I thought, Steve Sarkisian, when they interviewed him before their game kicked off, I did think it was interesting when, they asked him his thoughts and his perspective on Corso. And, he talked about, he's like, hey, I don't think we have the TV deals and the interest in the sport nearly as much if, Coach Corso hadn't done what he'd done over the past 30 years. It's an interesting way to look at it. And who knows where the sport would be if Coach Corso hadn't been that consistent voice and consistent charm that, had entertained us for 3 decades. Again, I'm 29 years old, so had been on game day more than my entire life up to this point. And again, we all grew a connection with him, and I think it speaks volumes to what he meant to the sport. When College Game Day's rival show, Big Noon Saturday, who was also in Columbus for that game between Ohio State and Texas, showed his headgear pick on their show, right? It wasn't the ESPN feed. They had their own camera, and obviously the sound was coming through the stadium, but they, in a show of respect, featured Corso's final headgear. Tom Rinaldi did a package on him during Big Noon Saturday. I think Chris the Bear Felica, who's a producer for them now, also did some stuff on Corso as well. So again, it just kind of encapsulates how universally loved he is around the sport of college football. And it's going to be weird not having him on game day anymore. And certainly how they're going to end the show without that moment of the headgear pick is going to be interesting. But nobody will ever do it like Coach Corso did, and was cool to see that one final time and to take it all in. And at the end of the day, I'm glad that he was able to go out of the show on his own terms, right? When he's dealt with the health problem that he's had over the past handful of years, there was always this worry from many people, including myself, that, well, it's going to get to the point where he was going to be forced to not be able to do it anymore. He was going to have a medical episode that just prevented him from ever being on the desk again, and it would end without a proper farewell. So I'm glad that, and he looked good in the tux too, right? I'm glad he got to end it when he wanted to end it. They gave him the proper send-off, 3-hour show. He got to pick Ohio State one more time in front of 80, 90,000 people all cheering him on. So that was really, really neat, and definitely going to miss seeing Coach Corso on the College Game Day desk. We'll dive back into South Carolina, Virginia Tech coming up next as Jamie Bradford joins me on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines, gives his perspective of being there in Mercedes-Benz Stadium yesterday as Reaction Monday rolls along here on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head along with you here on your Reaction Monday on the game on the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Continue to look back at South Carolina's 24-11 victory over Virginia Tech yesterday afternoon in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And now welcome in somebody that was there to see it all take place. Our guy, Jamie Bradford, joining me now on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Jamie, once again, appreciate your time. As always, how was the trip to Atlanta and your perspective inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium yesterday? Yep. We've talked about this all day long, but obviously the offense had its struggles after that opening drive to really get things going, and you had the touchdown late that kind of put the game out of reach. But in between there, certainly in the second and third quarter, left a lot to be desired. But when you have a solid defense, you're always going to not have as much worry because you're holding the other team at bay. And look, with still a lot of football to be played this year, but when you hold a Power 4 team, regardless of who it is, out of the end zone for 4 quarters, that's a feather in the cap of any defense. And I don't know if they're going to be as good as the one a year ago, but they certainly passed at least the first test on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Jamie Bradford joined me here on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines to look back at South Carolina's victory over Virginia Tech. And the one spot that seemed to definitely reload was linebacker. And look, we've talked all offseason about J.R. Johnson and the role that he's stepping into with all those guys, lost from a year ago, and Sean Murphy and Justin Okoronkwo, flanking him on either side there. And JR looked every bit of the part yesterday. Obviously, the highlight's going to be the interception that should have knelt in the end zone and put Carolina's offense in a better position. But regardless of that, still got the interception, still made the play there, preventing Virginia Tech from scoring, at least offensively. And then he was just all over the field. I mean, it seemed like every time he looked up, if he wasn't making the tackle, he was around the guys that were. And again, it's very much in line with what we saw a season ago with Demetrius Knight. So at least through one game, you feel like the linebacker room is very much in line with what it was a season ago. Looking at things offensively, I thought the first drive of the game was executed pretty much flawlessly. A lot of those dinks and dunks. He had the opportunity for Sellers to run on his own, which ended up being the touchdown there to get them the 7-0 lead. And I guess this is kind of what we're learning about Mike Shula as the offensive play caller is, okay, how does he take what's in the script and use that for the rest of the game? Because they got away from a lot of those things for the better part of the second and third quarter, saw them come on a little bit more towards the end of the game, and were successful once again. So I don't know if he's kind of I'm just going to go with my plan and not deviate from it, or if he's a guy that can kind of adapt and change his plan as the game goes along. But it seemed like those things that worked on the first drive did work when they implemented them later in the game. We just didn't see it maybe as much as we wanted to. You mentioned the offensive line, and it wasn't great overall, and this is a conversation we've been having, unfortunately, for years now. I will say, we did learn after the game that Shed Surratt has been injured, didn't even travel with the team, and the anticipation was he would probably have been your left guard based on what we kind of knew going into the game last week. So maybe you chalk it up to just not having your entire unit because, again, the offensive line moves as one, and even if one guy's not there, it can throw everybody else off. I didn't love what I saw out of Josiah Thompson yesterday, and we were kind of anticipating him to hopefully take a step forward this upcoming year. Again, it's week one. I'm not trying to overreact to it, but once again, the offensive line is something that we hope improves as the season goes along because yesterday left a lot to be desired. Yep. Mm-hmm. Focus on some of the key plays that helped South Carolina get this victory in the fourth quarter coming up next as Reaction Monday rolls along on the halftime show. Jamie Radford joining me on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. We are sponsored by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina here on The Game. Yep. Tyred here for our friends over at Pro Swing Columbia. How's your golf game doing? Do you need to work on your swing? Well, Pro Swing's got you covered. You can come by for a free 30-minute swing evaluation, and they will give you a blueprint of your swing and a couple pointers and drills to work on to help you improve as a golfer. They also use the OnForm coaching app during all swing evaluations and lessons to give you that before and after video of your swing, as well as some of those tips to help you make a better golfer overall. And when you're there working on your swing, you can also hop on the Golf Zone simulators and play at courses quite literally all over the world. You can buy the hour, and they also have membership available as well. They also have club fittings that are a tailor-made dealer too. A lot of great things happening over at Pro Swing Columbia. You can book online at proswingcolumbia.com or give them a call at 803-592-3916 for more info. Pro Swing Columbia.
Nick Felcitas Back to kick from his own 8-yard line. Snap it back. Gamecock set up the return.
There you go. Yeah, good pick.
Good
punt.
kick. Swain backs up to the 21-yard line. He's got some room. Comes up the middle. Now comes up to 35, 40. Down the near sideline, breaks another Tucker, cuts back at the 40. 30, got one blocker ahead of him, cuts back again. Hit the 10, stays on it.
Touchdown, got it.
Touchdown, Carolina.
Wow.
Big touchdown, Bakari Swain. Oh my goodness, what a return.
And no flags.
We've been looking for the play in the special teams for a couple of years, and the Gamecocks just busted this one open in the fourth quarter with a Bakari Swain return of 80 yards.
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Todd Ed along with you here on your Reaction Monday. Todd and Tommy on the call yesterday for Bakari Swain's punt return touchdown in the fourth quarter that helped propel South Carolina to the 24-11 victory over Virginia Tech. And Jamie Bradford still joining me here on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Got to witness it in person, and it's almost poetic that in the Beamer Bowl we see a special teams touchdown that helped South Carolina get the victory. What was it like taking this in person yesterday? Well, and I think it also speaks volumes to Bakari Swain in that moment because he did have the drop punt return earlier in the game that he was able to corral. But, after that, I think it was the next punt return they had Kilgore back out there, who was the original guy but was dealing with a hamstring deal. So they had Bakari Swain back out there. So for Beamer to trust him to, in a close ball game, go back out there in the second half and field punts again, and then for Swain to capitalize on it and, take that trust all the way into the end zone, I think speaks volume to him as a player, somebody that we've seen in doses, factoring in on defense a little bit, but making his first wow play as a Carolina Gamecock, and a pretty important one that helped Carolina win that game yesterday. Jamie Radford joining me in the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. We react to South Carolina's victory over Virginia Tech. The other score in the fourth quarter that sealed the game was the 64-yard touchdown to Nick Harbor. And I said this yesterday, that was a play we've been waiting 3 years to see because it was a post route, not a go route, but still, he outran the DB, caught the ball in stride, and there was no catching him after that. And he should have had 2 touchdowns, for being honest, from one that got overturned earlier in the game. But 3 catches, 99 yards, and a touchdown, a great start to what we expect to be a big year for Nick Harbor. Yeah. Right. Well, and I think this benefits the rest of the wide receiver room as well, because if he is blossoming into that wide receiver one, well, he's going to start commanding more attention, and that opens things up on the other side of the field for Mazio or Jared Brown or any of these freshmen that we've talked about the entire offseason, because, again, the less attention is paid to them, or the more attention that gets paid to Nick Harbor, less attention that gets paid to them, and those guys can benefit in their own way. So hopefully this helps the entire offense and passing game as a whole as we go through these first couple weeks here. Yeah, who had that as the first play of the game? Old school. Yep. Great way to start the season. 1-0 is 1-0 regardless of how you get there, and we'll hopefully be talking about 2-0 this time next week as they take on SC State. Jamie, appreciate it as always, and we'll talk to you then. Absolutely. Again, Jamie Bradford there on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the show and your reaction Monday here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. Halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Ed and Captain Dave wrapping things up here on your Reaction Monday. But the reactions do not stop with me. Jay and Terry coming up next with the Halftime show. We'll continue on from 3 until 6. Take your calls, take your text, and everything in terms of what you saw yesterday. I keep wanting to say Saturday, but playing on Sunday is weird. Well, we're not even 24 hours removed from this game kicking off. It is fresh as fresh can be with us in here talking about it. And obviously ended up being a good win for South Carolina and a great way to start the season. But, the interesting thing, by the way, you'll hear from Coach Beamer for his usual weekly press conference coming up tomorrow at 1 o'clock, as now we're actually back to playing games on Saturday. So Tuesday does mean Tuesday now instead of Wednesday meaning Tuesday and vice versa, for the team. A week ago. So we'll hear from Beamer tomorrow afternoon on the Halftime show for his usual 1 o'clock Tuesday presser. But one thing that he talked about yesterday, I want to hit one more cut from him before we get out of here. This is going to be cut number 23 here, Ed. Talked about the, not advantage, but the ability to face adversity in your first game of the year, to obviously use it as a teaching tool and something to build off of as the season goes along. Cut number 23, Ed. Here is Coach Beamer discussing that post-game yesterday.
Yeah, so good. And I just told him that in the locker room. I mean, it's a heck of a win. It really is. To have some guys that were down with some injuries, to, be in an environment like this against a team that returned a lot off last year's team, meaning Virginia Tech, that had this game circled on their calendar. Like, I've been in their shoes. It was basically us the entire offseason of 2024, where everybody's telling them how much they stink and they're not going to be very good. They watched College Game Day yesterday. They saw everybody on the game day set pick South Carolina to win big, and we knew it was going to be a battle. Or I did. I hope everybody else on our team did, but knew it was going to be a battle. And we talked about it, meeting with kind of our leadership group earlier in the week. We gave them some scenarios. It's an old, Michael Phelps, the swimmer, talked about, he used to think about before races, he would do the race in his head, how you want it to go, how it could go, or how it should go, how it could go, and how you don't want it to go. And I met with a lot of the leaders on our team earlier this week, and we talked about that. And one of the things that we said it could go is it's ugly for a while, and we got to just kind of hang in there and push through the adversity and stay close and stay together and get it to the second half, and we'll be okay. And I told them at halftime what we talked about earlier in the week. So really proud of their mental and physical toughness to hang in there and just keep getting stronger.
It's almost kind of the best mix that a coach would want, right? At the end of the day, winning is the most important thing. As long as you win the game, whether it be by 13 points or 1 point, you still win. It counts in the win column, and you get your season off on the right start. But you have enough things to look at to say, hey, we are far from perfect. And that's where I love playing a team like Virginia Tech in week number 1, or any Power 4 team for that matter. Obviously, you played a team in Virginia Tech that you had no way of knowing when this game was scheduled 8 or 10 years ago, whenever it was, what that team was going to be like coming in this year. They could have just as well been a team coming in off of a college football playoff appearance and winning the ACC, for all you knew when you made this game, a decade ago or whatever. But you came into the year with a team that, again, is average, one whose head coach is fighting for his job as of right now, and you didn't blow him out. It was uncomfortable for a good portion of the game, but you never felt like you were going to lose it, right? When you have a defense that was playing the way that Carolina's was, defense that obviously played really, really well a year ago, you're always going to kind of keep things under control. And eventually the offense did start to click a little bit more in the fourth quarter. Obviously the punt return by Bakari Swain really kind of opened things up there and gave you a lot more of a comfortable feeling. But at the end of the day, you have things to build off of. You have things to work on. You have things to improve on. And again, SC State this upcoming weekend is a game, no disrespect to the Bulldogs or any alumni that may be listening as of right now. That's a game that South Carolina shouldn't have a problem with. We've seen this a million times before where, you're supposed to win that game 45-3 or 56-10 or something along those lines, where you can get a bunch of freshmen in and backups and stuff like that and rest your starters before you start conference play a week from now. And if that game would have been in week number 1, as I'm sitting here, the SC Network's on and they're showing highlights of Ole Miss blowing out Georgia State. That doesn't tell me anything. I don't know how good Austin Simmons is based off of beating a group of 5 school in Georgia State out of the Sun Belt. But if they would have played, I don't know, Syracuse themselves or Louisville or something like that, I would have gotten a better idea of what Ole Miss is. So I think we have a good idea of Carolina at this point in time. Again, it's game number 1. We've got a long season ahead, and things are going to improve, and some things may get worse. Hopefully not, but some things could as the season rolls along, because that's just how football, football works at the end of the day. But you have things to build off of. You feel good than the fact that you won the game, which, hey, at the end of the day, again, is the most important thing. But you have things to look at, to go to the drawing board. I'm sure, as they're watching film yesterday and today, there's a lot of teachable moments, even for a guy like J.R. Johnson, who, again, had a really, really good game in his first time starting at Carolina, didn't take a knee in the end zone. That's a teachable, coachable moment, saying, hey, I know, when you get the ball in your hands, you're thinking back to when you were in high school and you see green grass ahead of you, you want to take that thing 100 yards, but it's in the best interest of the team and your offense is about to take over. Take the knee, get him out to the 20-yard line, give him some breathing room as opposed to getting tackled at the 2, which now sets us up to get a safety, which, again, things could have gone better on that play from the offensive line. Sellers could have gotten the ball out quicker. Nobody's absolved from blame there, but going back to J.R. Johnson saying, hey, next time this happens again, just take the knee. Regardless of what you see, just take the knee and let us live, to fight with a little bit more room coming out of the end zone instead of, being backed up against our own goal line. So a good win yesterday nonetheless, and something to work at and to improve on as we go through the rest of the schedule. SC State coming up this weekend. That'll do it for the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Coming up next, Jay and Terry continue on Reaction Monday here on The Game.